There is no growth in easy. There's no growth in the familiar. There's no growth in a pleasant, exciting, fun all the time. That's not where growth is. Growth is in and on the backside of difficult challenges. And is it bad? Only if we make it bad. Only if we decide, well, it shouldn't be this way. We're naive. Absolutely, it's difficult. And that's where you grow. Sean, it's always a pleasure to record an AMA with you, sir. How you doing?
Great. Good morning. Good to be with you, as always.
Yeah, it's good times. We mix it up. Today, we're going to field questions actually from the Brothers of the Iron Council, and shout out to those guys. When I looked over these questions yesterday, I was like, we got some solid questions today, and I'm pretty excited about covering these with you. And I'm, in fact, when I was reading them last night, I was like, well, how would Sean reply to this question? And it's kind of funny because you start learning. I don't know. You know this as much as me. You know Ryan's response. Actually, after a while, you know his response to almost every question, and then he starts repeating stories, and I do it too. I'm not criticizing him, but we have a lot of conversations around a lot of things, and guys ask a lot of similar questions, and we try to mix it up. But if it's the right answer, it's the right answer, right?
Yeah.
So, anyhow, so before you get into those questions, Sean, you got a headlines for us, sir?
It's less of a headline. And I mean, I guess it's a headlining topic, but I wanted to kind of turn it into a question that we can have a little fun with. Cause it's funny. We were just talking before you hit the record. You're like, I'm just kind of sick of the noise. Right. And I think everybody is. Any election year, especially as you get into October, November, it just gets ridiculous. It's so much, like there's not enough already, but my headline I thought of was, I'm watching a lot of people argue about the polls, right? I mean, they're arguing about everything, but the polls are a funny one to me. So my question is, when it comes to the polls, do you even believe any of them?
No, absolutely not. Well, and it's like, and we know this from statistics, we know this from running businesses. You can make stats and reports mean anything you want them to mean. You omit a little bit here, you sample only certain groups, and all of a sudden it ends up aligning perfectly to what the message is that you want to put out, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what we're talking about here, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and the reason I chose this was not just, I mean, it'll be a little quicker than normal, I think, which is nice. We can get into the questions, but it's just another example to me. You mentioned the noise. People get so, I've never ever paid attention to the polls because I just don't care. Because I'm going to vote the way I'm going to vote regardless. So who cares what might happen, right? Like that, to me, that doesn't sway me either way. I'm not interested in the what might be's. I'm only interested in what I can control and what I can do now, what's within my power to make the biggest impact possible. And what might happen is literally no concern of mine. And that's in every part of my life. So I think that's more why I brought it up, was just during this time, there is so much noise. I think it's most important for us to focus on what we can control, what we can do, who we're going to vote for, why, how informed we are, all of these things. And then after November, whoever does get elected, then carry on with their lives and still control it. Because it doesn't matter whether it's Kamala or Trump. And by the way, as I say that, I think this is one of the most important. They say that every 4 years. This is the most important election of our time.
Of our generation, yeah.
I think this is, though. I think this really is. I think it's a very important one. And I think the team that Trump has put together.
Yeah, but continue your thought, because what you're going to say is profound. You believe this is one of the most important elections of all time. And what?
And because of that, I'm going to be as informed as I can. I'm going to vote for who I'm going to vote for. I've already decided. And by the way, as I say that, and I'm willing to say who I was voting for or who I'm voting for, but I was voting for RFK. If I'm being totally honest, I mean, that's who I was on board with. That's who I aligned with mostly, because I thought the stuff he would do would have the greatest impact, on our country, on our health, on our kids, on the things he's taking a stance on. And once he jumped on Trump's team, and then Tulsi, and then Vivek, and then Elon Musk, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like a no-brainer. Like this is literally like the dream team from the Olympics in 1990, whatever that was, in basketball is going to play like some middle school basketball team as far as I'm concerned. Right. So I'm going to be voting that way. And my vote right now is different than it was going to be a month ago, and a month and a half ago. And but the polls don't sway that. Nothing sways that. And I'm decided in that there'd have to be something really major to sway me at this point. But it's not going to be the polls. It's not going to be what I see on the news. It's not going to be, I will continue to listen to podcasts of the people that are making an impact. So I've been trying to listen to more podcasts. I'm right now in the middle of listening to the Sean Ryan show, Tulsi Gabbard, listening to that, listening to as much as I can that RFK is on. I listen to less of the ones that Trump is on, if I'm being honest, because
he just says the same things and he's not really getting into it. Yeah.
Just hammering into the opposition. I don't need that. I want to know what they're going to be doing. So I like listening to that. I listened to one with Vivek. I listened to a couple with Elon Musk, and I'm on board. Like the stuff they have ready to roll is insane in how good it is. And the fact that Trump's going to let him do it, according to what he says, is I'm on board with, right? And so but I'm going to focus on what I can control in between and after, regardless.
Yeah. And what does that say about you if understanding what the popular vote is sways what you do? Like,
it just seems so weird to me.
But yeah, you got to be centering your decisions on something way more than what other people are doing, right? And obviously our audience probably isn't that group that needs to hear that message. I'm sure we're very much aligned that that shouldn't be driving what we do. By the way, did you hear? So officially, Trump is, I don't know what the date is, but is going on Rogan.
Oh, insane.
I heard this yesterday.
Be great. I'll listen to that one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm kind of excited.
I like that too, because Rogan will pander to exactly. Yeah. Like
it'll be great. So, all right, man. Well, let's get into our questions. So our first question from the Iron Council is from Adam Lewis. Kind of weird to read a question for myself here, but he says mostly for Kit. And you'll get the breadth of this, Sean, and I still want to hear your thoughts. He says, you talk about how you remember Asia's grandmother with your children to the point that they feel they know her. What things did you use to accomplish that? With my mother passing before even getting to meet my son, it is something I want to work forward with. And so what Adam is alluding to is, and I've made this comment on the podcast over the years, that my wife's grandmother, Meme, which is French for grandma, is very much alive in her family. And her legacy lives on because they have continued to make sure that her legacy lives on. And so what things, and Adam, you're giving me too much credit. Like, what have you done? I haven't done crap, to be honest with you. I think personally, my wife had such a great relationship with her, admired her as a woman so much. In fact, her journal, her grandmother's journal, is on her dresser. And it's not uncommon that I will see her flip it open, that journal, and read a couple pages from her grandmother and share those passages and those thoughts and those feelings that her grandma had in that moment on that particular day. And it's kind of interesting too. What she'll do is she'll go to the date that matches today's date, and where was she,
Oh,
right?
wow.
What was she struggling with, and what was the thing, and or whatever. And so I'd say she has stayed connected with her, and through that, she's allowed our kids to be connected with her. I think the other thing is there's traditions that we do during Christmas time that they've always done with their grandma ever since they were little girls. And so they sing some Christmas songs in French that they've always sung every Christmas I've ever known them. They did it when they're little girls. Their dad plays the piano like they used to do with their meme. And then I think the other thing is the sharing of the stories, right? My daughters had the opportunity in their school to do like a showcase highlight around, I think it was around World War II. And because of Asia's grandmother living through that, and actually their town around Strasbourg got overran by the Nazis. I mean, she was literally on her way to a camp when the Americans like saved them.
Jeez.
So she lived through this, right? I think her husband, no, her parents, her dad was underground Nazi that had to be forced to go to become a Nazi, and then ended up going underground and fighting against that. Like, just these rich stories that are just amazing. And my daughter had a chance to like showcase her grandma in a school report around this. And you might all be listening to this and like, oh my gosh, well, it's because she's such an amazing person. And the question to that is absolutely, it's because she's an amazing person, which then sets the tone of, well, are we being amazing? And what are we doing to have a legacy worth referencing, right, on our personal level? Now, specifically to your question, Adam, and your mom passing, and my condolences, by the way, with your mom passing away, but don't let her leave. What is it that made your mom amazing? And if maybe you have a journal, maybe you don't. If you don't have a journal from her, you journal it. Write all the memories that you have about your mom, and write about what an amazing woman she was and what she did for you and all those things. Write them down so you don't forget them, and then share them and talk about them, and bring her up constantly in the conversations, because you know as much as I know, does your mom love your kids? Absolutely, she does. Let them know that she loves them, even though she's not there with them. That's what my recommendations would be.
That's funny that you went both places I was going to go and at least bring up was just the legacy. It makes you think about the legacy that you're leaving when you're trying to, I guess you can say, prepare that for somebody else, and making sure that you're worthy of somebody, keeping your memory alive at some point. But the one other thing I thought of is before my mom passed, I bought a couple of these books that you can buy that basically have a bunch of different questions that maybe you never asked. Yeah, maybe you never asked when you were, growing up or whatever, about her childhood and how she grew up and different struggles and different things and, that kind of stuff. And if you get one of those books, now the funny thing is I bought a couple of those things, and I bought one where it's like I filled out a bunch of stuff. She was supposed to fill out a bunch of stuff, and she never did it. But the exercise of me doing that made me remember so many things about her that I wouldn't have on my own, or stories that I'd kind of forgotten about. And as I started going through that process, just remembered all these things that were worthy of speaking, to my kids about, and some of those memories that I wanted to keep alive about her, that I loved about her and cherished about her. And so maybe grabbing one of those books, you were talking about journaling, but outside of journaling, if you're looking for something that's going to prompt you to, some memories and some things like that, grab one of those. I think it's worth the buy. to go through it. And obviously, even though you can't go through it together, to give you those promptings and to get it on paper so that you can have it and pass it.
Well, and another thing that you could do is, I mean, isn't it quite ironic that the things that become important to us are, and even Ryan mentions this sometimes around the importance of the questions we ask. And what questions have we asked? Right? What kind of young man was my dad? You know, what did he struggle with? What was his ambitions? Right? And it's funny because some of those things I never knew as a kid because I stopped learning about who he was as a man because he was my dad and I had him in a corner. And we do that a lot, by the way. We stopped learning about people. And as I got older, there's things I learned about my dad. I was like, what? No way. You know, like one of my uncles mentioned, I think it was that like, oh, like your dad would go water skiing all the time. I'm like, my dad on a water ski? Are you joking? Like, because we are not a fun family. We're a work family, right? You want to get to know your dad, you'd have to work. We never did things fun with him. And to find out he had fun, I was like, are you sure you're talking about my father? Right. And so it's just interesting. And so, you know, maybe your mom has siblings still alive. What questions do you have about her that you've never always wondered about? Right. And maybe seek those out if you're capable. And you'd come to find out there's probably even more amazing things about our parents that we never even realized. Because we're so self-centered. I mean, most of us are as children, especially, you know, the world revolves around us and we, especially when it comes to our parents, we stop learning about them and what made them tick when they're younger and all those things. And then I was even thinking, Sean, when you're sharing how simple, and maybe I shouldn't say this because I'm going to have to hold myself accountable to this, but how powerful would it be if my grandkids had a letter from me? When I'm dead, I'd write a letter to my grandkids today. I don't even have any grandkids. But what I'd want my grandson to know, what I'd want my granddaughters to know. How hard is it for me to write that, store that away somewhere, and they have something from me? Not hard. And it'd probably be really powerful. In fact, I think it would be amazing, right? If I had that. And maybe it's 3 letters. A letter for when they turn 8 and get baptized, a letter for when they're 12 or 13, a letter for when they get married from me, from their grandfather. You know, like it, what a great idea, you know, and it wouldn't be that hard for us to do.
It is. I like it.
Cool, man. All right. Eric Gutierrez, what had been the crucial part to your personal growth?
When I saw this one, obviously you have a lot of different things that you think about. And I was like, what was the most critical? And honestly, I think the most critical was knowing what I want. When it comes down to it, is figuring out, I mean, every book that I've read, and to me, the most important one for my personal growth early on, when I started getting into that world, was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I think that one had the deepest impact because it laid out an outline for how to lay out your plan, you know, for what you want, but just the thought of what you want in the first place. And not only to want it, but in that book, Napoleon Hill calls it having a red hot burning desire for whatever that is. I think that was the most important part, because if it's not important enough, and if you don't want it bad enough, you're not going to stick with that development. You're not going to keep going if it doesn't push you hard enough. So it's probably a more simple answer than he was expecting. But for me anyways, I don't know if you have a different answer or something deeper, but I think knowing what you want, because otherwise you're drifting. You know, and if you're just drifting, you kind of, life can push you whichever way it wants. And when you know what you want, you don't allow yourself to drift.
You know what I think is profound, and Sean, let me know if you'd agree with this or not. But I think some people might get hung up in what you said, know what you want, because then they're like, well, I don't know what I want. And then it's like, what's the right thing? And blah, blah, blah. And I feel personally, you're not going to know what you want until you decide on what you want. And what you decide may not be right, and it may be wrong, but you decided. And deciding and going forward will help you identify what you want, if that makes sense. And because I think some of us will overthink it, we'll overanalyze it. I'm not sure what it is. And in reality, you're not going to know until you start taking action. And it's funny too. Like one might say that my financial success has been 100% because I chose the right industry and I have some great connection and talent around technology. And the reality of it is it's not true. I've been a consultant for over 20 years around technology. It is what I do best, but it's really not the tech that allows me to do what I do best. And in fact, it's not even my passion. The tech's not the passion. It's the conduit I use. But what I love is what? Critically thinking, seeking to understand, solving problems. That's available in anything. But I didn't know that was a passion of mine. I didn't know that I had a talent in that space if it wasn't for me latching on to, oh, I'm going to be a software developer. And I don't even code anymore. In fact, I haven't written a line of code for, probably 15 years. Like first 5 years of my career, I did software development, and then I evolved out of it. And then I became an architect, and then I would like business analyst work and other things, but I would have never known that if I just didn't make a decision and go forward. Would you agree with that sentiment and that statement?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up and even clarified more of what I was saying, because that's exactly what I said, but I didn't clarify enough that what I want now is different than what I wanted 25 years ago when I started. Perfect, I used to want a purple Lamborghini. I used to want a house on the beach. There's all these things I used to want that I don't want anymore. They're not important. So that's going to evolve. But those things were important enough at one point to push me to be better. And then as I got better, I turned into a different person. As I turned into a different person, different things became important. But and then I had to shift. Then I had to be at least cognitive enough to realize that I was different and that these things and you'll feel it. You'll feel a shift. You'll feel a change where this thing that was so important that it was literally the most driving factor in your life, all of a sudden became completely unimportant. I mean, forget about maybe getting like second or third or fifth on your list. You might eliminate it completely. And that's fine. Accept that. Be ready to pivot when you see that. But if you get in the habit and in the exercise of figuring out what you want and what's going to make you happy and what's going to help you be fulfilled, then that becomes your habit and you evolve with it.
Yeah, totally. All right. I'm not buying the purple Lamborghini though. High school car you wanted. What did you want?
In high school, I wanted this is going to sound stupid. I wanted a Civic SI hatchback.
I wanted a Civic HI. I actually wanted that, or I wanted an Accord, 50 series tires, 4-inch lowering. You know what I mean? That was the car, man. Like I wanted.
Dumb. I look back at it.
With my
I got an El Camino, which I'm glad, because I couldn't imagine not having a truck, like even though an El Camino is not really a truck, it's like half car, half truck. It is, you throw stuff in the back of it. And I couldn't imagine my life through high school and everything without it. But I wanted that hatchback really bad.
Dude, I wanted that hatchback. In fact, I remember not having enough money for that Civic hatchback, and I was like, man, I gotta figure out how to make some money, man. It was all about that car. I wanted that car. And then the hatchback, I throw about like some 15-inch, maybe some 12-inch subs.
Oh
Some
yeah.
pile drivers is kind of my brand back in the day. Oh man, you remember the
Uh,
bass mix tapes? They're
oh
like
yeah.
cassette tapes that was just all the best bass hits. It was almost
Yeah.
like techno before there was techno. Is
Yes,
really what it was.
for
And
sure.
yeah, man. And it would just rattle the car. It sounded like horrible outside the car. It just sounded like your car was falling apart.
Yeah, but you
Inside the
didn't
car, it
care.
sounded good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good times. I never answered the question for Eric on personal growth. I think for me, luckily, by the way, for me, my father-in-law, when I was young, Rick, he was a Franklin Covey facilitator for
Oh
Seven
wow.
Habits. And he poured into me as a young man. And I remember he was like, hey, I'm going to put you through 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And then there's like a
First
What
things
Matters
first.
Most course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember getting my planner. I remember getting on this. It was perfect. I don't know if it was divine from his part, but it was exactly what I needed in that time of my life. And what I needed was what? Systems.
Yeah.
Kip, you can achieve greatness if you have systems and if you're consistent in operating against those systems, and it has goal setting in there. And what's the most important things and what should we focus? What are the big rocks versus the small rocks? And it was just really perfect timing. And it really got me on this path of like, it's a reps. Oh, I want to be great at something. Awesome. Just get the reps. And it's all about how do I get more reps, not about am I talented enough? Can I do it? It was never about that. He made it really clear to me is what was important and how do I get the reps I need. And it probably projected my personal growth and development in a way that, man, I owe him actually big time for him doing that.
Yeah, that's as you are saying that was going to be my answer to one of the later questions, like one of the questions further down. So I don't know if you want to just attack
Yeah.
that one at the same time.
What was it?
From Chris Kroom.
Chris, let me jump over to it. All right. Chris Kroom, when you were first learning how to develop consistency in your life intentionally, what was your first big hurdle? And how do you remember how you got over it? How do you look back at that hurdle, having become the man you are today? Good question, Chris.
Great question. And my answer is my biggest hurdle was being organized, having a plan. Like I was all over the place.
However you feel.
I was drifting. Yeah. It was like
Yeah.
whatever you get home, it's like grab a 6-pack of beer on the way home, kind of as I'm drinking that, like friends would call or I'd call them. And then you figure out what you're going to do the rest of that day or night or whatever. Right. And it was like, there was no real plan. You just kind of drifted around. Even my job, I would go into my job and I was working in the studios and every morning I'd go 4 or 5 a.m. and get my tentative schedule for the day. I could be working a 4-hour day or a 14-hour day, day to day. And whatever tentative schedule I had the day before, it usually changed before I got there, and so I didn't really have a life conducive to planning anything. And so that was my biggest hurdle. And I took a First Things First course by Covey. And I was fortunate that when I started in my business, they had a deal with Covey at the time where they'd have those facilitators like your uncle who would come in, who would, show us how to be organized and how to plan. And they did the rocks thing and, all of that. And having that planner and getting a Covey planner and learning how to use it, and then that becoming my habit. Looking back at that now, everything that I do well in my life with consistency, I can lead back to me getting good at using that planner and being organized in my life and having a daily plan. Now it's the battle plan. Like I used everything I learned from there, and the battle plan I like better because of your daily tactics for those things. And everything now all of my good habits started with getting efficient at that.
Totally. Is that funny? Like I still today, like I am so, let me say it this way. I am so opinionated around the planning process and task management process that I learned in the early days of Covey that I have been angry at most task management tools because I'm like, nope, doesn't work. Nope, doesn't work for me. Not exactly how I need it. Like nothing. Let me say it this way. And this sounds crazy to say. And so if someone's in a technology space and you want my opinion, I'm more than willing to share this with you. Okay. But they have completely failed in this space. The original Palm Pilot version of the task management software related to Franklin Covey was the most superior task management tooling ever. And since then, it has fallen to the wayside and has never been duplicated ever since. And to this day, the tools I still use my battle planner for my dailies. But when I talk about task management, I identify my roles. I have a master task list. I pull from my master task list. I assign it to the appropriate A1, B1, B2, C1. Like I have makeshifted my version of the old system still to this day into how I manage my tasks. It's crazy.
That's hilarious.
It's such an imprint into my life. Yeah.
We made a planner for our one of our businesses, our coaching business. We made a planner for that business, our Happy and Strong business. And it was the foundation of that. Same thing came from Covey, and then little things that were a little more intricate, like specifically for our other business, our financial business and stuff to kind of coincide the two. But it was all on that foundation. Like everything you're saying, it's so funny. It's incorporated into that. And I mean, could you even imagine trying to live your life like weekly, daily without that, having that in front of you, and keeping you on task?
Totally. And what's Andy Frizzell's Power List, a version of it? They're all just like built upon. In fact, I was talking with Asia last night about how foundational Covey's stuff was back in the day and how much of things today are just built upon that system. Like I've been reading the book Traction, built upon that system. 4 Disciplines is execution, built upon that system, right? EOS, built upon that system. It was so foundational and disruptive and valuable that it's still even valuable today. It's just called 100 different things. You know what I mean? Well, there's one thing before we move on from Chris's question that I think was kind of profound. And I am same with you, Sean, like all those consistency with systems and discipline around the systems. The only other thing that I'd add that was a big learning is consistently I have been unreasonable with myself. Most of my biggest breakthroughs were times in my life where I went, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'll find a way. And I was just unreasonable. Like the average person would have been, there's no way you can't work this IT job full time and finish school full time. You can't do 21 credit hours. You can't pull that off, or you shouldn't go out and start your own consulting firm. You were making great money working for corporate America. Why would you do that? Right? Like there are all these little moments where my thought was, I don't exactly know how I'm going to pull it off, but I'm going to run with it and I'm going to find a way. And that has been really critical for me and my progress over the years, is sometimes being okay, not knowing the answer, feeling a little scared about it. And not only a little scared, it's also really exciting. Like sometimes when I do something stupid, like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm kind of, maybe it's just me, but I get all excited about it as well. And
that's everybody.
And then I find a way. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say everybody finds a way, but everybody gets excited about stuff.
Yeah. And it's usually in that space of being a little bit, and I know it's a play on words, but it's being unreasonable. Let's do something a little crazy here.
Yeah.
And there's some fun in that.
Oh, definitely. And that's some people's challenge. That's some people's vice, is that they get too excited about too many things too often.
And then they're not consistent
they don't
executing
focus on anything.
Yeah. It's a combination of the two. I like that. That. All right. George Sykes, how do you let go of the person you used to be in order to become the man of God you're called to be? I feel like I'm being pulled in two different directions. One is easy and familiar, but leads to loneliness and sadness. The other is difficult and unknown. I can't seem to fully embrace the difficult and the unknown, and it's driving me nuts. I can take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, then another 4 steps forward and then steps back. I need help.
You know, when I read this, my biggest thought was, George, it sounds like you're on track, dude. Like when you said I was unreasonable with myself, my thought when you first said that is that you set too high of an expectation for yourself. And then when you don't hit it, you feel like you're failing, and that's where I thought you were going to go with that. You went somewhere entirely different, but that was the thought that I had when you said unreasonable. And I think that's what George is doing here, is maybe his expectation of who he's supposed to be, because he now knows what he wants is, and I think that happens to everybody in any goal that you set for yourself. You come up with this goal. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to do this. And we have these false expectations of what we should do in the first year, the first 5 years, the first 10 years, the first month, or whatever it is. And when we don't hit those expectations, we feel like we failed. And that's why most people give up on their businesses. That's why most people fail in business. That's why the numbers are so high with people not doing it. It's mainly because that expectation wasn't met. And we have to get rid of these expectations for where we're supposed to be and anchor to our growth in process. Mm-hmm. And our process is being firm and sound and getting us results. It doesn't have to be all of the results that we want right away, but as long as we're getting better, we're on track. And you're going to backslide, and you're going to, and again, I'm kind of relating this to business, but any part of your life. Let's talk about being a man of God. I mean, I look at today, I chose to follow a path in my church and in my faith, and accept Jesus as my Savior, now 23 years ago, almost. And in December, it'll be 23 years. And I am completely different. I'm a completely different human than I was those 23 years ago. And then me just being on the path of being in my business made me a better human than I was even, 2 years prior to that. And it's like terrifying thinking of how different I was back then, how I thought I was good and I was not a good guy, how I thought I was, trustworthy and upstanding and all these things. And I just wasn't even close. And if I had the expectation that I was going to be who I am today, but that was going to happen within a year or 2 or even 5, that was a false expectation. Now, in saying that, as different as I am, I still haven't completely let go of who I am. Right? I mean, like when people attach this stuff to scripture, they think of, I think a lot of people think of Paul, right? And they think of the transformation from Saul to Paul. I mean, he even changed his name, right? Like he was literally a new man in Christ. And it doesn't mean that all of Saul was gone in him. Like we all have tendencies and we all have weaknesses and we all have these things that we're born with that you can't entirely get rid of. And I thought of this actually this week. I was building this deck/treehouse thing with my boys over fall break. And I left my 14-year-old to be in charge of music, on our little boombox thing, our Bluetooth thing out there that was playing music. And he was playing all the stuff. He started out with like his mumble rap stuff that he likes to listen to. And then that transitioned into like 90s hip hop, and then it transitioned into the stuff I used to listen to with my dad and my stepdad on construction sites, which is like Journey and Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith and AC/DC and all these, like the classic rock stuff. But it was so funny because I was singing along. Once the like 90s hip hop stuff started coming up, I'm singing all these songs. And I'm like remembering how in high school, now these were all the clean versions of these songs. And I can't even sing the original versions anymore. And I used to sing them word for word. And now here I am, I'm singing along with them, but I'm replacing all the dirty words with clean ones, but I still like, I'm not detaching who I was when I used to listen to that stuff and the crazy things I used to do at that time in my life. I'm not trying to forget that it existed. I'm not trying to bury it completely. I can still, the fun parts of that part of my life, I can still enjoy and kind of remember, but also like that builds me up because I remember how far I've come.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that.
Totally.
So instead of just trying to completely ditch it, you just embrace like, hey, I have these parts about me. I can still embrace them and I can still be a man of God. I can be a good example. I can continue to grow. And some of us, it's going to move faster than others and some are going to be slower. But the bottom line is growth. And so the fact that he said, I take steps forward and then I slip back and then I forward and dude, you're on track. To me, it sounds like anyways, what do you think?
Totally. The analogy I use, you're in it. You're absolutely in it. I feel like I'm being pulled in two different ways. It's not easy. The easy pulls me and the difficult seems unknown. You're in it. And guess where you grow? When you're in it.
Yeah.
You're exactly where you should be. And absolutely you're going to be pulled in different ways. Absolutely you will. That means you're about something. This is one thing that is so critical. This past weekend, I had the chance to do a facilitated class with a bunch of youth around self-resilience. And if I had to summarize the lesson that I hope that they would walk away with is we need to normalize the difficulty. Absolutely, it's difficult. And that's where you grow. There is no growth in easy. There's no growth in the familiar. There's no growth in a pleasant, exciting, fun all the time. That's not where growth is. Growth is in and on the backside of difficult challenges. And is it bad? Only if we make it bad. Only if we decide, well, it shouldn't be this way. We're naive, right? George, God wants you to be the best version of yourself. You are being ignorant if you think it's possible to be there without difficulty and challenge. And that's why not everyone is willing to level up and become the best versions of themselves, because it's not easy, but there is no growth any other way. And so I agree with Sean. You're in it. It's awesome. It's perfect. Try not to be in it, and don't make it wrong that you're having difficulty and doing difficult things. Embrace the suck. Don't make the suck necessarily bad. All right, Noah McLaughlin, how do you better pinpoint and discern when you're tuning in or tuning out? And how can we better use our surroundings as a guide for what signs, sounds, and soundtracks are serving us and what's not serving us?
Sorry, can you repeat it? I wasn't paying attention.
Poetic question by Noah, man. So how do you better pinpoint?
I'm just kidding. That was a joke.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
I was tuning out. the noise is always there. And so we have our choice every single day. I laughed when I saw this one because I'm so ADD. I'm so all over the place, like in my thoughts. I constantly am listening to books and podcasts. It's rare that I drive around and just like listen to music and kind of veg out. I'm generally listening to things to try and be better. But also in saying that, probably half the time that I'm listening to these podcasts or books or whatever, they'll mention something and then my mind drifts and, or it reminds me of something, or I'll even start singing a song in my head and start doing that and not pay attention to what I was listening to, so I drift. And so, because my brain works that way, I think that's also though why I make sure that I place in the forefront of my mind all the time these things, these podcasts, these like the information that I want to help keep me on track, because I can so easily get off track. And so in church yesterday they were talking. We were with all of the men, and they were talking about what leads us to falling away from our faith, what leads us to a point where we don't believe anymore. And my answer, and I think where we landed as the majority, everybody agreed on, is once we stop in the fundamentals. We don't keep spiritual things at the forefront of our mind. We stop praying. We stop reading scripture. We stop attending church. We stop being in holy places. We stop being around people that have spiritual strength that can strengthen us. We stop listening to examples, of people who built their own faith. We stop listening to testimonies. We stop bearing our own testimonies, right? And those, like these simple fundamental things, I think everybody's looking for something big, but when we get rid of the fundamentals, then it's easier to slip away. And the less we have in front of us, then the faster we're going to slide. And so I think for me, I stopped trying to pinpoint when I'm tuning in or tuning out. And instead, I just try and keep more things in front of me constantly to keep me tuned in. And when I do tune out, I'll catch myself of like, oh man, I didn't hear the last 15 minutes of what I was listening to. And sometimes I'll rewind it. Sometimes I don't. I just kind of carry on, but I get back to tuned in. So I think I'm less concerned with discerning when I am or I'm not, as much as when I do realize that I'm not, I just get back on course, and that does come back to what we were talking about earlier too, with planning and, having a planner and making sure that the most important things are getting done. Because it's so easy to get distracted with, with kids, with life, with, everything hitting you and for you to get off that course. But if you have it in front of you and it's clear and you keep the track that you want to be running on in clear sight, then I think it matters less when your focus it's on or off of those things, as much as once you do realize that you're off, that you jump right back on and you have a clear path to be able to do that.
Totally. Well, and I feel to summarize what I'm hearing you say is control your surroundings, right? By being intentional around what you're putting in and what you're tuning into, that's how you're going to discern better, because you're not letting other things dictate your surroundings, right? Whether they provide value or not. The other point that I'd like to add for Noah is the power of being present. And you alluded to it already, Sean, when you're listening to something. And sometimes it's good, better, best. That's when this starts getting really difficult. Mm-hmm. Good and bad, that's easy. good, better, best, that starts getting really hard. Well, there's this thing I should be doing, and it's really important. But is it as important as being with my children and being fully present with them? Is it really as important as my relationship with my loved ones? And that's when the decisions start getting more difficult and they start getting muddy. And to that issue, I would say, Noah, be fully present. If you're playing Legos, be the most amazing Lego player with your child. If you're playing in the backyard, be fully there. If you're at work, be fully there. Whatever it is, be fully present. If you're having a conversation with someone, don't just listen to their words. Seek to understand how they feel. Where's their desires? Where their frustrations? Be fully there. And now we're not wasting the moment. In my opinion, most of us waste the moments by multitasking, by trying, and we're tuning out and in, and we think we can tune in and out and accomplish more. And you're not. You're just doing more things in a very half-assed way. And so be fully engaged with whatever it is that you're about. If you don't like your employer and it's not going well, figure out, get pissed or get off the pot, right? What are you doing? But if you're going to be there, be an amazing employee. If you're not liking the job and you feel disconnected, then leave or but be all in whatever it is that you're doing. And there's huge value in that mindset. And then if it doesn't work out, then you change your mind later. But until then, go all in. And far too often we're constantly looking elsewhere. Oh, maybe it's better over here. Or what's this over there? And we're distracted. And I think, to be honest with you, we're distracted because we're unwilling to really put the effort in where we are. And there are so many opportunities of growth and development with where you are right now. And we're so busy looking at tomorrow that we forget we're living today.
You know, as you said that, it's funny that I don't really think much about it, but I realized it as you were saying that, is that, you know, when I talked about listening to podcasts and stuff, I'm very clear on why I'm listening. I don't just listen to 20 different ones to gather more information, because I don't need more useless information. I want to gather information that's going to serve me in whatever's the most important to me right now. So like before elk season, guess what I listened to pretty much 24/7. It was all hunting pods. I mean, it was like I was just listening to tactics and different things and just having it in my brain, everything, you know, the physicality side of it, all of it, just so I could be the most mentally prepared, like put myself in that state of even being there already before I even got there. And as soon as I shot that elk, literally like on the way home, I was into the next things that were like, what was this next month going to hold in store for me? And that was more family driven. So I was listening to more, you know, like the Dad Edge and, you know, like some of these family podcasts that I like listening to and those things. You know, right now, currently the election's coming up. So like I mentioned, that's what I'm listening to, stuff driven on not even the election, but just looking deeper into the policies, the teams that, you know, on
the issues,
either side of the issues and listening into that just so I can be my most informed, but then also I can help with the influence that I have, help other people understand those things as well. And so that's what I'm listening to now, you know, and I don't know if I'm going to do it all the way to the election, but right now, that's the stuff that's in my brain. And between now and then, something else comes up, whether it's in business or whatever, I'm going to shift to that. You know, before podcasts, it was books. It was like I needed to be a better leader. Then I started reading John Maxwell's books, you know, and getting proficient in those things. We already mentioned Covey. When it was building better habits, that's when I read Atomic Habits and The Power of Habit. And that, you know, like I would read a string of books or topics or podcasts or whatever it is on those things. And instead of 20 different books on different subjects.
Totally. Well, and it's intentionality. I mean, and what does the average guy do? Go home, plop on the couch, flip on the channel. They're not even
watch
being
football.
intentional with what
They
they're
don't
consuming.
even, yeah, exactly.
I got sucked into something. It's like,
watch
oh my
football,
goodness.
whatever.
Yeah.
Binge Netflix.
All right. Simon Pratt, what are some effective strategies for making a smooth, successful transition when getting promoted to a new position?
Ask questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the most important. Be willing to ask questions, not act like you know everything, and be willing to learn and grow into that position. That's the biggest failure I see in my business and just in general in the business world is you see too many people with potential that are unwilling to ask the right questions to
learn.
To speed up the process too, right? I mean, it's so much faster and easier to ask, and too many people are unwilling to. And so for me, that's the biggest thing I look for is people that are coachable, willing to learn, willing to ask. Yeah. What would you say? I mean, you're more embedded in, I guess you could say, kind of a corporate environment than I am.
Yeah. I say the same thing. Check your ego, right? You're going to want to step into the new position and flex and look good and try to impress everybody. That doesn't work. Think about all the people that act like that in your life. You're annoyed by them. And so try to watch the ego, focus on learning the ropes, be slow to coach and suggest because you're going to come across overly arrogant. You don't know what you're doing. And then you have an opinion already. You've only been here for a week. I've been in this position for 10 years and you're giving me advice. Are you joking? Right. Mm-hmm. So be slow to suggest anything. Focus on just really learning by everybody. And then the last thing I'd say is get yourself in a position of influence. And guess how you do that? By having relationships with people.
Caring.
So get going, get knowing everybody that you're working with, understand them, like seek to truly understand who they are, their needs, their challenges, the difficulties that they struggle with. So not just so we can manipulate them, but so you can have positive impact on them. And you're not going to be able to do that if you really don't know who they are. So get to know your team.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, care about the mission, care about the people, and then find the people with the strengths to carry out that mission.
Absolutely. Oh, one last thing came to mind. What is winning in the new position? If you can't answer that question, if you don't know what a highly successful XYZ person is in this position, you need to get the answer. So ask leadership, hey, I need to understand what is exceptional in this role. How do I measure it? How do I confirm that I'm killing it? Get super clear and you own it like they're your client and you work for them. Get super clear and execute against it. And if you get blocked on winning, you raise your hand. Don't be a victim. Oh man, I didn't get what I needed from Sean. No. Hey, Sean, you mentioned winning looks like this. I have a blocker. I need these things for me to be successful. And you default aggressive, be assertive, ask for what you need to be, and ensure success. Don't wait to be acted upon. Yeah, that's it. Maybe there's more.
For now.
But those are the main things. All right. Andy Collins, another leadership question here. I've been offered leadership position at work, which is more of a lateral move for me, going from an administrative to leadership role. I have hesitation about going for it. It would be a big step moving into being a supervisor. It has been suggested that I should go for this in the last, but have balked at the idea due to my unwillingness to work night shifts again. How do I know if this is the right move for me to move into a leadership or stay in the position in which I am comfortable and good at? One side note, my schedule is more favorable in my current role.
Andy, you're probably not going to like this, but just the way you worded this question, you don't sound like you're ready for a leadership position, if I'm being totally honest. And
excited about it.
Not excited. Yeah. And the fact that schedule is that important to you, just means, in my opinion, that you're not ready. Now, are you ever really ready for a leadership position? No. If you've been in administrative and you're moving into leadership and somebody sees the leadership ability in you, there's a reason somebody's maybe suggesting it to you. But if your schedule is more important than, I mentioned before, the mission of the company, and you being comfortable in your schedule is more important than that, then you're not ready for a leadership role. So you have the ability. So you're never going to be ready to take on the task of leading people. And that's going to be a process and that you have to learn through and go for. And in most cases, I would say, go for it. Like, take that risk that Kip was talking about. It's exciting. It's new. It's everything else. But there's a couple sentences in here that talk about your comfort and your schedule. And if that's going to be pulling on you, you're not ready.
So, Sean, if you don't mind me, and I get the spirit of what you're saying. Let me know if you agree.
I knew it was going to come out wrong, and I probably articulated it wrong, and it might be wrong entirely, but that's my thought.
No, the intent is, I think, spot on. You're using the word ready. Here's the word. You're not willing.
Yeah. Yes.
Because like you said, we're never going to be ready.
Yeah.
But Andy, if you're not willing to do what it takes to be successful, then you will fail.
Good call.
So you got to be clear. Are you willing to do what it takes to win in this other position? And if you're not, then you're going to make a decision, and then you'll just be compliant. You'll show up mediocre, and you're not going to show up powerfully. So get clear. Are you willing? And if you're not, then don't do it. And you're not ready. Or that's not the direction you want to go. Okay. Marcus Stud. I've had actually the opportunity. Have you met with Marcus yet?
Dude, I was going to say Stud too. That's hilarious that you said that.
I had a call with Marcus.
He is awesome.
I've really gotten to know him of late, and just a solid dude. He's getting married. So what's one thing, this is his question, what's the one thing to be mindful of or do on the day of your wedding to make a memorable experience for your new bride?
Show up, dude.
Don't back out,
Make sure you show up.
That's funny.
This is funny. When I saw this, I kind of laughed because when my wife and I got married, we got married on a company trip in Hawaii because it was kind of my dream to get married in Hawaii, and my wife thought that'd be fantastic too, and so that's what we did. So the fact that it was kind of ideal for the two of us, that was all we needed, and we were both there. And so we didn't have to overthink like, oh, do I have to do this dance routine or whatever, Now we had a reception when we got back home for people on the mainland that, because majority couldn't fly to Hawaii for our wedding. And then there I sang her favorite George Strait song. It's like our song together.
Yeah.
And I sang that to her, which was terrible, but she thought it was funny and loved it. And we still talk about it to this day. But honestly, that was less important than just the commitment to each other, and the fact that, and for us personally, it's our commitment is for time and all eternity. And, that's kind of how we view it. And that's always been more important to us than the day. Right. And so, you may want to do something, but even though it's kind of tongue in cheek and kidding about showing up, I actually think that's the most important part.
Yeah. Well,
and when I say showing up is like showing up thinking that this is your eternal partner, this is, there's not an out, there's not a, until you make me mad, and that kind of a thing. I honestly think showing up in the right way is the most important.
Yeah. I mean, and Marcus, I'd ask her like, hey, for this day, next month to be really impactful to you, like, what does that look like for you? Yeah, and then that's going to give you some clues of what you might want to do or be intentional with. I think through experience, the one thing that I wish I would have done better is eliminate all the stress as much as possible. It's already going to be stressful. You guys might be go-getters, so you're like, oh yeah, we'll manage the caterer, we'll manage this, we'll do this. No, no, no. Find someone to do all of that for you. So that way you guys can just be present and in the moment and not have to be taking care of people. That's what you don't want, right? You guys stressing about all your guests and are they being taken care? No, it's your day. Figure out how to make it your day as much as humanly possible. Delegate things out, even though it may not be exactly the way you would do it. Delegate it anyway, so that way you don't eliminate those stresses. So you guys can just be there and be fully present and be engulfed, by the memory of it.
I'm glad you said that. It's when I think back to it, I actually did that. I lucked out. I think I asked my wife, like, hey, what are the most important little things that you want to have at our wedding? And what it was the bouquet. And then it was like the giveaways, we gave away these dumb little things with like sand and shells from Hawaii in them to people that like had no relevance in my opinion at all. But it was so important to her that we have these cool little things to give to people. And between that and the bouquet and those things getting done right, the way that she wanted, that was like, to your point, just something she didn't have to stress about for that day. And, she was able to focus more on what's important, I think. I think it doesn't have to be a grand thing, but maybe ask those questions, or what are the little things, the little details that are the most important to her.
Okay. Last question. You good with one more?
Yeah.
One? All right. Raul Gutierrez. Both of you fellas are athletic. Thank you, sir. What sort of post-workout nourishment routines do you adhere to?
Mine is more often pre-workout than post-workout.
Yeah.
I have like a meal replacement drink / shake thing that I drink almost daily, every day that I'm working out in some capacity. And I make sure I drink that before my workouts, or if I'm going to jujitsu, I drink it on the way there, and which is a few times a week now. And then for post-workout, it's more just watching my meal intake. I got really cognitive of avoiding snacking a long time ago, making sure that I'm putting good, clean, organic food, proteins. Now my protein intake consists of almost daily. I'm eating venison, now, and venison and elk. If it's pork, it's wild game still. It's, sausage that we harvested. And so all of my meat, all of my protein intake, by large majority, probably 90 to 95% is wild game that we've harvested. Great, man. And being able to do that with, organic vegetables and fruits and things like that, that's the majority of my diet throughout my day. So I think it's more important for me that I'm watching that intake and making sure that it's clean post-workout, and then pre-workout, there may be a shake or, I started taking creatine again, not to build muscle, but just for cognitive health. There's all these new studies coming out on the cognitive side with creatine, and I feel good with it. So I'm adding that to some of the shakes now. Not that I'm doing it every day, or like I said, I'm not trying to like grow or build with it, but that's what I'm using. And then supplements. I'm taking vitamin supplements daily. But again, it's not specific to working out. So I don't know if that totally answers your question. But to me, it's more important that my diet is clean than I'm eating specific like protein bars or or creatine or protein shakes or, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I think it's mostly clean diet. I've been trying to get away from protein drinks. I just like, if it's like eggs and meat, you know what I mean? And just try to get back to the natural things. I always take a post-workout creatine. There's a really good brand. Message me, Raul, and I can send it to you, at least what I'm using. But I read this post and I tagged it because I'm like, man, this is profound. And it kind of, to your point, Sean, around diet, it says, if you undereat protein, you'll overeat carbs. If you undereat salt, you'll overeat sugar. If you undereat real food, you'll overeat junk food. And it's funny. Like, so like, awesome. I should not have simple. These things. Guess how you do it? You make sure you're getting all the right stuff. And then it's a hell of a lot easier to avoid junk food when you're eating real food. And it's so true. And so maybe that's a thought for you as you dial in your nutrition and your diets. Although Raul will do it, if I believe correctly, like last time I saw him at a main event, the guy's like shredded. So I'm not even sure why you're asking us.
Yeah, wrong guys.
Yeah. He's like a shredded dude. So I'm like, I don't even, apparently you have no idea who you're asking. So, all right. So big couple call outs, join us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/group/order-of-man. The Iron Council enrollment is closed. So good luck. New Year's, you're on your own. However, if you want to get connected to us and be part of a program that we follow, you can sign up for the Battle Ready program. It's kind of a self-paced one that you could put into place for the beginning of next year. Or at least the last quarter of this year, I should say. And that's orderofman.com/battle ready. And then you'll have another chance in December to sign up and join us so we can kick off 2025 together. As always, you can connect with Mr. Mickler on X and the Gram at Ryan Mickler. And anything else, Sir Sean, before we wrap?
No, this is always awesome. Hope it helps some guys.
Awesome. Thanks for filling in and for being on and sharing your insights, Sean. I always appreciate them, and I know the guys do as well. And until Friday for Friday Field Notes, take action and become the men you were meant to be.